Welcome to another episode of the Jess Berry podcast. Today we've got Jason Becker joining us. He is a multi-exit entrepreneur and founder of Vintage Wisdom Media, where he helps brands and people tell real stories that inspire. With over 20 years of experience in leadership and growth, he speaks on values-driven leadership, entrepreneurship, faith, and building a legacy that lasts. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Jess. I really appreciate it's an honor to be here, an honor to speak with you and your audience getting to chime in and listen. So I'm really thankful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I was looking through your Instagram and you have so many just funny videos. I love your content.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad somebody's listening. No, it's a lot of fun to do and figure that out. Since I started podcasting and doing the media stuff, I mean, social media is really a major currency in our culture today. And so you can run from it, you can hide from it. Sometime in the distant future, I'm sure it'll morph and change again and be something else. But right now it's here. And if you don't play in it, then you are going to be left behind. And so it's fun to do. I have reels that I'll do that I think are just hysterical, and nobody listens. And then there's other ones that, I guess slap for whatever reason. Yeah, the other day I logged on and Instagram told me, said, we've now broadened your audience. I was like, okay, you've been creating good reels. We've now given you a new audience. I thought, well, it really doesn't have anything to do with me. Or maybe it does, So they definitely control the pinch point on that stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's all just trial and error and figuring out. It's like a balance between what does your audience like, but also what do you find fulfilling to create?
Well, yeah, I think it is. And part of that, it needs to, if you can figure it out, and I'm constantly changing. I feel like I'm starting to find a better lane with what I'm doing. And I put things out that are more serious, and I put things out that are funnier, or I put things out that are a life lesson or a tip. So I try to do a little bit of all of it, but I think I'm starting to find an audience and in building pillars off of what I speak to and what I can speak to. And faith and entrepreneurship and family tends to be kind of my pillars of what I speak to. But yeah, that social media game, that content creating game is very interesting. And my wife and I constantly look at when the post was posted. How long was the post? What was the content? How was it received? And then trying to replicate the ones that did well at those times and that length and all that stuff. So it is not all smoke, it's not all, a bag of chips. You really got to work it. You really got to work it. Yeah.
Well, I know that you've walked through a lot in both business and life, and I'm curious if you could share a pivotal moment of adversity that helped shape the person and leader that you are today.
That's a great question. And man, I mean, it could be pivotal moments that shape. One of the hardest times that I think about, I remember my parents divorcing when I was 19, and that was tough, and it shaped my life. I mean, my home life felt very chaotic, and especially during that time. And I know my mother, she listens to everything I do, so she'll probably listen to this and be like, "What do you mean it was so chaotic?" So, Mom, when you listen to this, know I love you, and there was peace at moments, and it wasn't all bad. But when they were decided to divorce, I think there was just an underbelly of probably stuff going on. And I can remember my wife and I were dating since I was 17 and she was 15, so we were high school sweethearts. And I remember driving over to her house and just in tears. And crazy enough, though, I mean, in my heart and soul and mind and body, I knew that they didn't need to be together. But there was this breakup of, there is something when you're 19 and you feel like you have this steady family, and all of a sudden it's gone. And then you also start worrying, well, how is my parents going to survive? How is my mom going to survive by herself? How is my dad going to survive? I can remember my dad left. He was so distraught and he left. And you almost have to know my dad to know he didn't leave peacefully. And when he left, I remember calling him and concerned as a 19-year-old if he was going to do self-harm, and praying for him and being in that. And I can remember those emotions. Even talking right now, I can remember I did not have this on my bingo card to talk about today, but I just remember that was, as a 19-year-old, it was just so like the world was eating me, and it directed me in a lot of different directions that was really pivotal because I didn't hang as much as I should. And I think there were moments I was there for my mother, and there were moments, but I immediately left to go. I transferred schools almost immediately and got out of the situation. And I followed my wife and her family, not just her, but her family started speaking life into me more, which, and she came from parents and they were still together and loved each other and all of that. And so that to me was hard, but yet at that moment of growth for me, I was seeing the death of a very bad marriage that should have been dead a long time ago. But I was able to see, in contrast to that, a very healthy marriage. And they weren't perfect, but people were working with each other and wanting to love each other well. And so I think that was pretty pivotal for me. I have other moments though, for sure.
Well, I love that you used that phrase, speaking life into you. Your wife and her family spoke life into you. I know when you go through adversity, and I experienced that with the divorced parents as well, and I think it's fairly common in today's society.
Yeah,
It
50%.
yeah, yeah, it can really impact how you see yourself and your personal identity. So how did them speaking life into you help you kind of navigate that personal identity?
Yeah, I mean, some of it was verbally communicated, and some of it was just the way they treated me. So and the way they treated each other. So I started hanging around there, right? Chaos was going at my home. And so I started hanging around at a home that was peace. My family, I grew up having family dinners, but they would have dinners and they had conversations that were a more open communication. I would joke about it with them because I grew up in a home where we had a very regimented prayer. We would say, dear Father, bless this food, our bodies, and, all that. I mean, I don't even remember the prayer anymore, but, it was the same prayer we said every time at dinner. And I go to their house and it was just a lot less, it was more informal. And there almost wasn't a dinner that we didn't talk about sex, bowel movements, or something else, And I would just laugh. I was like, this is so crazy that we're having this really relaxed and informal conversation as a family.
Mm.
And just the way they treated me was just so. Years later, my father-in-law would introduce, after my wife and I got married, would introduce people and he would say, this is my son and this is my daughter. And I would have to then clean that up and be, I'm the son-in-law. We're not from Alabama, and it was like, there are plenty of things they spoke to me about how to be more disciplined and how that I could make it through college on my own. I could work. I could save money. I could do things. So there were practical things that they would share with me. But a large part of it, speaking life to me, was their loving example. That was a large part of it.
I love that. And something that you shared beforehand was the deep personal loss of your in-laws. So walk us through that.
And again, I don't want to detract from my mother or my father, because my mother, I just want to say real quick, my mother has prayed for me every day of my life. And if your audience is listening today, if you've got a mother or a father that prays for you every day and you know it, you need to pick up the phone right now. You need to text her. You need to call them. You need to go over there. You need to put your arms around their neck and say thank you, because that prayer, you don't understand how much if you don't covet prayers, you need to start coveting them. I love when people pray for me. When somebody says, I just prayed for you, oh my gosh, I can feel it. So knowing that my mother prays for me every day is so important. She really placed this faith in my heart at a young age. And I'm so very thankful for what she did there, and is certainly a saint. But like I said, when that chaos happened, and I know my mother and I had lots of conversations, and we talk now, and she lives just down the road from me, and just had dinner with her last night. Like I said, I just know I need to say a few things because she's going to listen to this and be like, Jason, you didn't say enough about me. But I'm just kidding. My mom's great. But my wife's parents, they really did become kind of second parents to me. Again, I was 17. My wife was 15. There was chaos that was an underbelly in my family that broke out into this divorce. had that kind of adversity that was going on, went off to school, paid for my own school. And her parents helped. They didn't help me financially. They just helped me know that I could do it. And years later, I went to work for them. I retired my father-in-law, and my wife retired her mother. So we were second generation garbage haulers and entrepreneurs, and grew that business and exited in 2009. And in 2012, I believe it was, my father-in-law, we had a spend the night party all at our home. And we were living at this time, my in-laws, after we sold the business, they had a home in Florida where we live now. So the Destin, Florida, Panama City Beach area is right between there. And so they had a home there, and they had a home that was, as the crow flies, a mile from where we lived in Atlanta. And so they would come back regularly because we had all the grandkids. And so they were staying in their house, which was on the other side of this golf course hole that we were on. We were on one side. There was literally a fairway splitting our houses, and they were on the other side. And we had some kids spend the night. It was Christmas time, 3 days before Christmas. And we had some kids staying the night. And we hadn't even really wrapped all the kids' presents. Our kids were at that age, elementary school and younger. I think our oldest was probably in 5th grade, something like that. And maybe 4th grade. And so they would trickle down from there to kindergarten. They all had friends over. My wife got up, made some breakfast. And next thing you know, she gets a call from her mom, and her dad had a blood clot. At the time, she didn't know. Something was wrong with her dad. She had to call the ambulance. Had a blood clot that went to his lungs. And in the ambulance, which the hospital was just outside this neighborhood, wasn't far at all, but he passed away in the ambulance. 57 years old. He was taken from his 3 days for Christmas inside of 10 minutes. And I can remember my wife said, something's wrong with my dad. The ambulance is there. I've got to go. And I don't know what she threw on. I feel like she ran in the room. I mean, because we were all in like pajamas. Again, it was that Christmas break week, and a few days before Christmas, all the kids had a friend over. My wife's making waffles and bacon, and we're watching Christmas movies and all of this stuff. And she just takes off. I call my mother, who lived near us then as well in Georgia, and my mom in a heartbeat comes over to watch the kids. And I mean, he was gone before I got to the hospital. You know, it was really tough. It was a tough time. Christmas was, I would say, quite frankly, we are just now enjoying Christmas again. I would say probably in the last 3 or 4 years. So we've had to put on good faces. When you have young kids, you got to put on a brave face. My wife has had a harder time with Christmas. I mean, that's her father. So as impactful as it was for me, triply impactful for her. So Christmases were tough. We all wanted to cancel Christmas that year. Everybody wanted to cancel Christmas, but except for the kids, right? I mean, they missed their poppy, but they're also kids. And so I was working out with a bunch of guys from the church at the time, and I'm so grateful for those guys. I mean, I still have a special place in my heart for those guys, because I reached out and they would say, what do we need? What do you need? What do you need? And I said, man, I literally have not wrapped one thing. We were going to do that. We were going to do some that, 3 days for Christmas, we were going to do a little bit that night, a little bit the next night, a little bit the following night and get done. We just kind of procrastinated during the season. They all came over to the house in a back room, put all the gifts in the back room, took all the wrapping paper, and they wrapped every single gift for all 3 of our kids so that Christmas was ready and prepared for our children. And of course, family came into town, and it was difficult. Shortly after that, 6 months later, my mother-in-law had major pain in her bones and needed to go see what's going on. And long story short, we walked the road with her. She was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer that had gone from her lungs to her bones to her brain. And so we walked that road with her. We walked the treatment, we walked the chemo, walked everything else. I think it was a year and a half, and she passed at 55. And so I think my wife was 35 years old and was an orphan. And those deaths for those pillars, and to be that young, and for them to be so in love, and for them to so love our kids. Like I long, wow. When I think about the loss of them, I feel like my kids lost more. I really feel like my kids lost more. Because as a parent, I realize it now. I'm 48 years old. hope I know whew, I don't know how to say this the right way. I think I've been the best dad I could have been. I could have always been better. And there's moments in time that I've made excuses for why I couldn't be there, or why I wasn't there, or why I wasn't available or present or whatever. And I'm not done. My kids are healthy and great, and they're just older. But when you're living your life and you're growing a business and you're doing all those things and you're saying, I'm putting my family first, but are you really putting your family first? And are you doing all those things? And so there's moments that I'd love to have some redos. I'd love to have some redos. And I'm very involved with my children and my family, but there's redos. And so I know her parents, though, were in that moment because they were building a business. They were first generation builders. And look, her mother was very involved. Her dad was involved. There were things he missed because he was at work. There were times he shouldn't have been playing, and he should have been at a tennis match, or he should have done different things. And I promise you, he had regrets. But he was also at that point where they had made it. They were in that retirement zone and in that mid 50s, that late 50s, and they were on easy street. And here they were. The day he passed, that day he was supposed to take our daughters to the Nutcracker. My Poppy and Gamer taking them to the Nutcracker for a Christmas deal that evening. And it was all of those are the moments, those are the ones I long for. I miss them, but I also had them. And I know my wife misses them. And she had them. And even then she would selfishly say, I miss them for me, but I miss them for my kids. I miss them for my kids. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for that one, Jess.
Well, first, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And two, not a successful podcast unless I make you cry, right?
I guess so. Yeah, no. Hey, look, I'm a crier. I'm not afraid of it.
I love that.
And emotions are important, and having emotions are important. And we're emotional people. I mean, whether you like it or not, you either bottle it or you don't. One of the two, right?
Right. Well, and to just be able to exemplify that it is okay to express your emotion and yeah, I think
right.
that's a beautiful thing. So thank you. Looking back on those experiences, it sounds like it helps you put into perspective what's truly important and valuable in life. It's those little moments.
No, I totally agree with it. The downside of those moments is that you create different moments. And so if you fast forward past those adversities, 10 years later, that year of David passing and that year of my mother-in-law, Lisa, passing, yeah, you totally get it. I mean, you could go through your storage. In America, we love to store stuff and hold on to stuff. It's not as big in Europe, but here we store everything. I mean, we have storage centers, for crying out loud, where you go and you drop everything in a storage center and pay a fee for them to hold on to stuff that you're never going to look at again. So in those years after it, you could clean out a storage unit when something like that happens because you go, none of this matters.
Right.
Now, fast forward 10 years, the further you get away from it, you can be numb. So yes, you do start realizing it, but the way the human spirit works and the psyche works, the further you get away from trauma, still impactful, still hurtful, still a loss. It's something you live with every day, but it's not something that dominates every day. It gets numb. It gets pushed down a little bit more. And then there's days, I'm sure. And again, for like right now, when you speak about it and it hits you. And so I probably should go clean out a storage closet or something. But my wife, for her, it would probably hit her faster. Those were her parents. As big of pillars as they were to me, they were her parents. And when you think about it, and she said this to me after the passing. She said, Jason, I know you love me. I know you love me. But my mom and dad will always love me. I mean, they will always be there for me. No matter what I did, no matter what I do, they're always going to love me. And I just lost that. Wow. I think she would say she'd probably have felt like you're in a circus and you're one of the trapeze people, right? And you're swinging from line to line and you got a net. So if you fall in that circus, you got that net. That net was just taken away when you lose your parents.
Yeah.
Especially at a young age. Yeah.
How would you say walking through that grief has impacted your faith?
Yeah, lots of ways. So there are moments that you can draw close, right? 'Cause I think as the Beatitudes is blessed are the poor in spirit, for they'll inherit the earth. I think Jesus is with the brokenhearted. I think he understands the brokenhearted. But then there's moments of time that you're angry. You're angry. And you really get angry when you're like, see somebody else, that's a real jackhole of a parent or whatever. And you're going like, you didn't take him. You took the good one. Like, what the heck,
Hmm.
And so you go through stages. I mean, grief in large part, counseling would tell you grief has stages of denial and stages of anger and stages of depression, and you can cycle through all these. You can think you got through a stage and come right back to it. I mean, when somebody significant passes in your life, I think it's additionally a 7 years before you get where it becomes normal. 7 years when they're that significant. So
Yeah,
faith wise, I think it's been a journey. Now the great part of it is it's been a journey. I mean,
yeah,
that's what I love about it, that we didn't set it down. We didn't walk away. We took our anger to God. We talked to counselors. We met with people. We went through things, and my wife and I both independently and together. And I mean, we took the anger to it, and we held on to our faith and that journey. So that I would say would bring you closer to God. Anytime you have a conversation with God, I think you get closer.
yeah, for sure. I love how you mentioned the anger and
Mm-hmm.
the role that that plays because I think a lot of times when we go through adversity, it's easy to confuse God with man, and I think sometimes we blame God for certain things, or we put him in the shoes of like the person that hurt us, and it's important to remember that distinction because if you're angry at God, you're not going to want to bring your anger to God because you're placing him as the subject, right? So
Yeah.
having that distinction, then it allows God to be that space of comfort for you.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I mean, you still like, God's the author and creator, right? And so you still like you're supposed to be in control, but practically these are just some of the things you have to work through. There's moments and times. I mean, look, there's a great book by this. It's a Japanese guy. I think it was Shaku Indo, and it's called Silence. It was made into a movie by Martin Scorsese. The movie's okay. The book's amazing. And Adam Driver, who's in Star Wars, was played, I think, one of the pivotal characters in the book. But in the book, it basically follows these missionaries that went to, I believe it was Japan, and they really had to be underground. And if the government found out that they were there, they were going to persecute people. And what the government would do, they would say, I'm going to kill your friend here if you don't. They would call it trample on the fumie. And it was an artifact, or maybe it was Christ's face or a cross. And he say, you have to trample on this, and then you can save their lives. And many times these key people, when they found out they were a believer, they're like, I can't give up my faith and say, I don't believe. And I apostate is what they would call it. And I trample on the cross. And so you would see them kill people in vicious ways. They would kill them until you, and then they'd kill you. And then they go until they get this guy to apostate. And there's famously a guy in the book that would apostate, come back as a believer, apostate, come back as a believer, apostate, and come back as a
Mm,
believer. Well, the missionary was finally caught, and he had all these people that he'd been praying for, this Catholic priest, and he'd been praying for all these people. He'd been loving on them. He'd been nursing them. He'd been bringing them to Jesus. And here they were, and they were going to be tortured in most inhumane ways to their death if he didn't trample and apostate his faith publicly in front of everything. And he heard this voice in his head, and he writes in it that he heard the voice of Jesus tell him to trample on him, that he was always meant to be trampled on. He was
mm,
always meant to be abused. He was always meant to take it. He was always meant for it.
mm.
And that those lives were important. And so he did it, and he apostated. Now he did that publicly, but it's long believed that he never gave up Jesus. So it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So I think God can take it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Right. I think it's just so interesting, like the relationship that we can have with God in the midst of adversity. How do you think your life outside of adversity influences your relationship with God when you are facing adversity?
Yeah, well, I think that's where maybe it really matters, right? Because when you are facing adversity, I think there's an old saying, and somebody said it, a guest on my podcast said, "There's no atheists in foxholes." You know, right? Like when you're really at it, everybody's believing. I think I watched the documentary the other day. I watched a documentary on the Dallas Cowboys, and Michael Irvin was primary featured. He's a great NFL football player, and he's featured for many reasons. A lot of them being the wrong reasons because he got caught with drugs and all this stuff, and he had to come over that adversity. But his last game of playing football, he was hit and he landed on his head and he actually was paralyzed. And just 3 days later, he got his feeling back. It retired him. He realized he could no longer play football or he could really be paralyzed. But he says in the documentary, while he was laying there, that he was praying to God that he would, I give up these friends. I'll never drink again. I'll never do right. Because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And so really, I think your relationship with God when it's quiet is super important. I mean, there's 3 stages in life, Jess. You're either in a problem, coming out of a problem, or going into a problem. Those are the 3 stages of life. And I think about it with my kids all the time, especially as they're getting older and out of the home. And I have one left in the house. She graduates this year. I think about it because I want to protect them from problems. But they're getting to the point I can't. And so I think you forge your faith in the problems, but I think you grow your faith really in the calm spots, like in the moments. Those are the seasons that I think you really can grow your faith. It's the places where you can breathe, where you can read, where you can listen to a song. My aunt, who I love dearly, has been one of the best Christian educators on the planet, teaching and helping develop Christian education. I love her to death. And she gets a Sabbath where they would basically say, you need to take a day every month or 2 or whatever. You need to take a day for growth reflection and faith reflection, which any place that does that, I think, is an amazing time. So it's not just a day of vacation. We want you to lean into your faith somehow, but enjoy the day off and really reset in your faith. And this is a school she was at, her last school she was at in Dallas, but she told me that she sat at home and played the piano and sang hymns all day long, right? And so you don't think about those moments that sometimes you just be playing a great song, right? I love the words like, how great thou art, Lord my God, in awesome wonder, I consider awe. And those are the things that, like, when you listen to that in those quiet moments, that's where I think you forge it, you stretch it, all those in the tragedies, but you grow it in those moments. Those quiet moments, those seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I haven't thought about the words to that hymn for a while, so I'm glad that you shared those. It's a really powerful one.
It really is. It
Yeah,
really is.
it makes me think about nature too.
Sure.
Anytime I'm in nature,
Sure.
like it connects me with God and that sense of awe, which I believe is a huge part of who God is, that sense of
Right.
awe.
Oh, it is. No, I agree. I mean, when you understand the intricacies of how this world balances and how our bodies are created, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see a child born, but at creation alone, I mean, I can remember just being in tears with my son, just bawling because I could feel the presence. I could feel the presence of God in the room. I mean, I just felt God's presence in this creation of another person. And he was healthy and he was happy. And my wife was healthy and my wife was happy. And that the pair of us, through this miracle of creation and love, birthed a person, a human being who is now about to be 22. So it's just
Wow.
insane. It's an incredible feeling for sure.
And you have 3 kids? Is that right?
3, yeah.
3.
My son's 21 right now. My daughter's 19. They're both about to age up at the turn of next year. And then my youngest just turned 17 yesterday. So yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have a favorite parenting moment with them? Well, I'm
Man,
sure there's a
there's
lot.
yeah, there's so many. I mean, really at this moment, the ones that just pop into my head now certainly be current. I mean, they're all over the place right now. So my son's in Tampa at finishing his senior year at the University of Tampa. My daughter's in cosmetology school. She did her AA in West Florida in Pensacola, but she's now in Atlanta, north of Atlanta, doing a cosmetology program with Paul Mitchell Salon. And so she's up there, and then my youngest is graduating. She's at home. She's the senior in high school now, and so really they're scattered, and the parenting has morphed. Still parenting, still moments that I have to step in, especially when you're still supporting your kids and say, hey, this doesn't seem right or that doesn't seem right. It's a lot less
Hmm.
now. The correction zone. In fact, I'm in an area of the world that a territory of the world of parenting where my wife and I both start asking our children, do you want our advice or do you want us to listen?
Mm.
Because they have to figure out their own things. And so now my favorite part of parenting, well, growth is one of my favorite parts because parenting grows you. It's a mirror on you. It's a growth on you. It's a patience grower. It's a can I take the pressure grower? It's a humility grower because you're not going to hit it all. So I appreciate that about parenting. But now my favorite moments, because they're scattered and they're all partnered, those worlds, I love it when those few moments I get when we're all at the same table, my five. That's my favorite part is when we vacationed this summer and it was just us five and we spent 2 weeks in Ireland and it's family. There were moments where we rubbed each other the wrong way, but
Hmm.
I had so many great meals. There was just the five of us and that those will forever be special to me. Those moments. Yeah.
Kind of takes it back to what's most important in life is
Yeah.
those special moments, right? Just the little
Sure
things.
does. Sure
Yeah,
does.
I love
Yeah.
that. So thinking back when you were 25, let's say if you were 25 today, where would you focus your time and energy to create a life of both meaning and success?
That's a great question. This is really good. I was on another podcast just recently and a young person asked me the same question. And what's funny is this season on my podcast, I've been asking every guest if you could go back and tell your 25-year-old self anything knowing what you know now, what would you tell them? So it
Oh,
is insane that you
nuh-uh.
just asked me this question. So, and
Wow.
I haven't put all the thought to it. But I mean, practically, if I was 25, I would be so heavy in AI. It's not even crazy. I would be diving into everything AI. I would be making tools that other people would buy that would be for AI. So I would totally be down in that world because I think that can give you the one thing I love about this generation. And it's funny because I talked to a guy the other day and I love this guy. He's a great guy. I've known him since he was in high school and I was just out of high school, but I've known him for a long time, but he owns a business and he told me, he said, man, I don't know what's wrong with some of these kids, but they keep talking, these young kids keep talking about how they need a work-life balance. And man, we just need to be able to work and we need to be able to focus and we need to get, he's a little bit that old school, like just drive,
Yeah.
drive, 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 drive. And I understand it. I felt the same way. However, I think the new generation, I think they may have it right. And I do think when you're at work, you need to work hard. And I do think you need to be disciplined. And I do think you need to execute. And I think all those things are super important. But you do need a work life balance because that job, if you're working for yourself, it's a little harder. If you're an entrepreneur, they always say that's the job you give up 40 hours to work 80. So look, it's a
Hmm.
little different when you're an entrepreneur. It's a little different when you're working for yourself. But that job is not going to care for you. That job's not going to come visit you if you're in the hospital. That job's not going to bring you a casserole. The job's not going to pray for you. The job's not going to hold your hand. That job's not going to give you a 6-second hug. A job's not going to do those things. So you need to invest in it. So I love this new generation coming around that I think does work hard, but I think recognizes the need for the balance. And so I would probably lean into that AI world because I think that technology can create opportunities to give you a good work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy the amount of time and effort and energy that you can save by using AI.
It's insane.
So
I
I
was telling
agree.
my son's he's in the finance world, and he's, in fact, today he's interviewing for another internship and a possible job afterwards, kind of in the investment banking world and analyst and all of that. But, I was telling him, I said, they're going to hire less of those folks. Now, you still need analysts. You still need people looking at numbers. Still need to be putting it together. I said, but you can literally AI. I'm looking at these 5 companies and what is the asset management or what, like you could
Yeah.
totally, and they may or may not be right, but that's like a huge amount of research that would have taken you days, hours, if not days,
Hmm.
to answer that question for your boss somewhere, that you can pull it together. And I mean, my wife gave me a shopping list the other day, and I don't know anything about a grocery store other than they have food and drinks and stuff like that in it. So I showed up and I took her list and I put in an AI and I said, I'm in Miramar Beach, Florida. I'm at Publix. How do I need to shop this? And they said, well, they don't have a floor plan there, but here's traditionally, would you like us to put in a list of the traditional floor plan? I said, yes. So it said, these 5 things are in the produce section. Great. These things are in the mid aisles. Look for these tags at the top of the aisles. They were exactly right. Then this one's
Wow.
in the dairy section and whatever. So I moved through Publix that day like a pro. I look like a pro. I look like I had been there my whole life.
That's
So I
awesome.
lean into AI as a this dad from the 1900s. I lean into AI a lot these days. So yeah.
And like thinking outside the box too, because I would never have thought about using AI for shopping at the grocery store. I love
I
that.
use AI in the studio. I get in the
Yeah.
studio. So I had a problem with Riverside at one point, and some of these things, and I had my frames per second were on 30 frames per second. So I said, why is my volume off on this and not right off on this, and my audio and this and the other? And so I chat GPT, what do I need to do? And it said, oh, here's step by step. This is the camera you have. Hit this button, go to this, change your frames per second. So I do everything. Like it's like my new Google is Chat GBT.
My mom she's like about 60, 62,
Okay.
and she just barely, got into using AI, and she's
Yeah, that's
like,
so great.
it's just awesome, like seeing her,
I had dinner
like
with my
discover
mom.
that.
I love it. I agree. My mom should be 74, I think, this November. And uh, she told me last night at dinner, she says, so do I need to take an AI course to figure out how do you do AI? And I was like, well, Mom, I feel like I understand what you're saying, but let me walk you through how to do this.
Yeah,
So yeah, she's trying to figure out. She goes, "Do you think it's worth me doing?" I said, "There's a free version. I think you should play with it. See what happens."
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So going back to business a little bit, what common mistakes do you see young entrepreneurs or leaders making that you'd love to help them avoid?
Yes. So first off, great question. I do think it's funny because I'm actually speaking at a conference coming up, and this is somewhat of my topic of talk, because I deal a lot in the media world and the content creation and all that stuff. You realize that your audience has a very short attention span. We are an attention seeking world right now. Our culture is all built around attention seeking. Everything is like 2.7 seconds. I read somewhere that if you're in China, for say, they still want to be like astronauts and scientists and all that. Is if you're in America, they want to be a social content creator. They want
Hmm.
to be Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do. It's not easy to do. Mr. Beast put up 500 reels or whatever it was, before he had his first one explode. I mean, everybody's an overnight success, but they're not.
Yeah.
So as a young person, I would tell you, and as a leader and an entrepreneur, you are going to have to hook people, and it is going to be harder because the attention span's getting shorter. But you need to lead the tried and true, lead by example. Super important. The other thing I would really implore you is to create buy-in. So how do you hook? Because you have external customers that you have to hook. Totally different conversation. But you got to figure out, how can I get the consumer hooked in like 2.7 seconds? What makes them want to do it? Sometimes it's packaging, sometimes it's messaging, sometimes it's just the product, and ease of use. So all of those things matter. But internally, you have customers that you've got to hook, and those are your employees. If you don't take care of your team or your employees and all of those things, they're the backbone of business. And so you've got to be able to take care of those people. And I would say if I was an entrepreneur, young entrepreneur today with a team that was underneath me, I would have a weekly feedback or a monthly feedback award where you got a Chick-fil-A gift card or you had something like this, because what you don't realize is you get buy-in when people start giving ideas. And you want people to think like you. So if you're awarding the best feedback, that's the idea that most closely aligns with your goals, right? And most closely aligns you getting to your goals. And so I would have lots of those things. We didn't do the feedback one as much, but we did what we called the Benjamin Awards, where it was a $100 bill. And if you had 3 compliments that came in from somebody who wasn't your immediate family, then I would give out a Benjamin Award, because you went out of your way. And it created drivers that would run up to somebody's house and get their garbage can and bring it down and dump it. And they'd say, hey, can you make sure to give them a call and tell them I did this? And people go, well, that's cheating. And I'd say, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care, because that customer still picked up a phone and called in, and it made that person go up and go an extra mile to help them and be kinder and to do differently. So when you really create buy-in, that's where you've really hooked. That's how you hook your internal customer and your employees and your teams.
Great advice. Thank you. I know you have multiple business exits behind you. What is one of the biggest lessons that you've taken away from that experience?
Well, when you sell it, be prepared that they are going to do whatever they want to it. So you build something, you love it, you nurture it, you care about it, you're so invested in it, you put so much time in it. In our case, it's a second generation. So you've got generations that have cared for it now. And you've seen drivers put their kids through school. You've seen people do stuff. And then when you sell it, they can completely dismantle your reputation and everything else. So you just got to be prepared for that. That's a big lesson. My father-in-law, funny enough, we disassociated so well when we sold. We didn't care if they painted the trucks canary yellow, but I wanted employees to be taken care of. And the ones that were closest to me were probably the first let go. And that was always tough to see that happen. Fortunately, we had really great people that they pivoted right into other things. But I never liked that part of it. But when you sell a company, it's not yours anymore. The group we sold to logged me out of my computer. I lost my email that day. My phone, I kept my phone number, but I was kicked off the plan, and they changed all the locks in the alarm code that day. The wire hit at 3. The wire hit at 3. The locksmith was at the door at 2:30. So when the wire hit the bank, they were changing the locks. That's how quick it is. So you just got to be prepared, which again, hey, I can give me a bunch of money, I'll let you change the locks. So you just got to be prepared. So celebratory for sure, but that's something you got to be prepared for emotionally. Practically though, when you have a business, you have revenue coming in. So for us is reoccurring revenue. Even when I've exited like homes or developments or things like that, you have revenue and goals and ends. But when you get that chunk of money, you've turned off a spigot. So we had reoccurring revenue coming in every month from people that are paying for garbage service. And actually they pay quarterly. So they pay 3 months in advance. That's the really great thing about garbage. You didn't even do the work yet, and they've already paid you. Again, we always cared about doing the work and keeping good reputation. But when you turn off that spigot, you might have a big pile of money here, big or small, whatever your big is. But that money, you're going to just keep taking off the top. So you've got to find a way to invest it somewhere so that you can get it producing and working for you. And that was really big for us. Real estate was what we turned to at the time. My wife and I continue to own a lot of rental properties in the metro Atlanta area and college towns. And that's been a great business for us. But yeah, you have to be ready for that pivot. Otherwise, I know people that their big wasn't as big as they should have gotten. And inside 3 or 4 years, they're back trying to start another company or trying to get something else going or doing all that. You've got to be mindful of the fact that it is not an endless pile of money. And, 2% interest in the bank ain't going to do it. So yeah. And if it's even 2%, you got to find another way to create some revenue and generate it. And you want to create a space that you can take that money and, everybody's chasing something, right? And because we have the social media, it's like the worst keep up with the Joneses game that you can possibly play. Everybody wants to be the guy that has the private jets and the helicopters or whatever. And you can look, I actually like this group better because it's, I think it's Instagram handles Ball Busters. And they expose these guys that all they do is talk about how if you're like me and you sell really good, you do really good, you can be on this plane. But a lot of them, they go to the runway and they pay some guy on the runway to let him on a private jet, and they take a picture, and it's not even theirs. It is such a scam, sleazeball thing these guys do, right? But people want to keep up with that. Ideally, if you were to sell a company, let's say $10 million, lots of money, even in today's language, $10 million. And let's say you only need $100,000 to live. You were making $100,000 salary. You were doing $100,000 salary, and you're saving your money and doing all this. If you made the right plays and you found a way to take the $10 million and to make somewhere between 10, 12% interest, which there are real estate, there are other things you can do. If you can figure a way to make 10, 12% a year off that $10 million, now, you got $1 million. You got $1 million a year. You might have a little bit more. You might have 1.2. You might be, and so you might have that, now, but if you can live off 100, you don't have to live off 1.2. You live off 200 and be doubly as good as you were. Yeah. Save a little bit more, and you can really move forward. But people don't think that. And so what happens, you get the $10 million, you're like, well, I got to keep up with Alex whoever on Instagram that just was flying private, and he's doing it, and it's $30,000 a flight to do or whatever. Again, it goes quick. That stuff goes quick. And so humility is something that is super important for every entrepreneur. Your ego is not your amigo. So, yeah.
I like that. Did you come up with that?
Oh, I'm sure. Look, there's nothing new under the sun. Solomon said that years ago. So I promise you I didn't come up with it. I say it a lot, though.
Yeah, I like
that. My father-in-law used to say that to me. So, and he rightfully should have said that to me in my 20s. So he probably got it from his dad or somebody like that. Yeah.
So I know that you founded Vintage Wisdom Media, and that was more of a pivot towards storytelling. I wanted to ask you, what legacy are you most intentional about building through your work today with that?
That's great, man. I really want to all be about Jesus. I want to be about Jesus. I want to be about his story. I want to be about and Revelation says that we are saved by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Obviously, the blood of the Lamb, Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross and what he did for us is where we are saved. But I think they say the word of your testimony. I think John, when he wrote that, saying it's the word of our testimony, is because that's what leads us there. That example, when we talk about in business, lead by example, that testimony is the example of Christ in our life. North Point Church, one of the largest churches in America, and Andy Stanley, they do baptisms pretty regularly. Anytime anybody makes a decision to have a relationship with Jesus, they sign me up, and they're baptizing folk. Yeah. They put a heavy hand into the production side of a video. So if you've ever gone to a baptism at a North Point sort of campus, there will be a very well-produced story of why that person chose to follow Jesus. And then it spotlights on the baptismal stage, and they baptize that person. And he's talked about this in different podcasts, and I think in his book, Deep and Wide. But the reason of that is exactly the word of our testimony. Because those testimonies impact people. When somebody else is dealing with growing up as in a single family home, or had that addiction and then found Christ, or grew up motherless, or grew up fatherless, or grew up and they lost their brother and it made them angry at God. I mean, everybody has this version of Christianity that at some point, every story that walked away from Jesus had a version of Christianity that caused them to walk away from Jesus. Mm. And so what brought you back, and that's the testimony. So I hope those are the stories I tell. I've got a new series that I'm in the infancy stages of it. I mean, so infancy, but I'm creating it called Not One More. And it's really for a local charity here that near and dear to my wife. My wife serves on the board, but it's the Emerald Coast Children's Advocacy Center. And they take in like 1,400 kids in our 2-county area that they see every year. And it's usually sexual abuse by somebody that's one of the closest people to them that have abused them. And these are kids that don't even know what sex is. and they bring them in and they take care of them. But they have to do medical exams, disclosures, all these things. They walk through them through the prosecution, all of that stuff. But then they have counseling and recovery and things like this that they lean into. And so, there's a series I'm doing that obviously we won't bring the kids on, but we're developing this of how to tell their stories and how to tell the story of redemption that can come through this beauty from ashes sort of thing. So those are the things that excite me the most.
Yeah, you just gave me chills. I know you
No.
don't know my story,
Okay.
but so yeah, I love that. We'll have to connect more on that later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what would you tell 10-year-old Jason?
My gosh, 10 years old. I mean, hold on. It's going to be a wild ride, right? Practically, I tell myself to stop saying the sinner's prayer. I grew up in a world that I love the folks around me, and everyone that was around me. If you're listening to this and you happen to be around the Southern Baptist Church in the 80s and early 90s, I love the fact that I learned about Jesus every Sunday. I love the fact that I learned about Jesus throughout all that. I also, somewhere, some way, I picked up a version of Christianity that I felt like every time I got out of line, I needed to ask Jesus back into my heart again. And I can remember daily praying, Jesus, please come back into my heart again. Forgive me my sins in your name. Amen. And I mean, it wasn't until like my early 30s that I said it the last time. I was like, I'm not saying that again. I'm not doing it again. His grace is enough. Where sin abounds, grace abounds even more.
What do you think your 10-year-old self would say to you right now?
Wow, those are good questions. I mean, I think overall my 10-year-old self would be proud. I think he'd be proud of the moments. I think it'd been thank you. I especially believe in the light of grace that it would just thank you for holding on to Jesus. Thank you for holding on to your family. I mean, there are moments in my life. I mean, I knew people that history's littered with people that have been highly successful and socially, crappy, just terrible, and use their power and use money and use influence to do the wrong thing. And there's moments in my time that pivot could have easily happened, but instead I'm thankful for my wife, and I'm thankful for those moments that the people around me, again, reminded me humility, or reminded me of servanthood, reminded me of, again, your ego's not your ego, reminded me of the love of Jesus and principally how that relationship was so important. Yeah. So I think my 10-year-old self would be happy with me.
It's a great place to sit in and know that you've done the work, and looking back and be able to feel that gratitude as well. I think gratitude is such a huge factor in our overall well-being.
It really is, Jess. And, I think it's scientifically impossible to be angry and thankful at the same time, right? Or sad and thankful at the same time. Jess, you said something there that you've done the work. And I think that is important, that you realize you have to do the work. This stuff doesn't come easy. This is not an easy thing. I'm still a work in progress. I'm still a work in progress. My wife and I have done counseling together. We have done counseling separate. I've had to lean into the dark. I've had to put the mirror in my face and look at what am I missing and what can I do. I've had to take the childhood trauma. We all have it. And I've had to create that drama circle and go through it and say, like, what are the moments that I need to lay at the foot of the cross? What are the moments that I need to work through so that I don't repeat a cycle? Generational sin is real. And so if it comes into your life and it penetrates you in there, I'm sorry to anyone listening that that's happened to you. It's happened to me. It's happened to my kids. I'm not perfect. I've told my kids that, and they are, by the way, I do pay for their counseling. But I said, I will pay for your counseling. And if you need me to show up and apologize for anything, I will. Because as a parent, nobody gives you a playbook. But the one thing that makes you healthy is realizing that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes. My parents are great people. There's mistakes made, and there's things that I just said, I don't want to do those things. There's plenty of things I say, hey, that it's like good science and pseudoscience, right? I don't need all the junk that they get put in me, but I can keep the good and leave the bad. But that takes a lot of work to get there, and to
Mm-hmm.
have grace for them, and to have forgiveness for those moments. And so you're right, Jess, you have to put in the work. You have to be willing to put in the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that saying, choose your hard. It's hard to forgive, but it's hard to
Yeah,
be angry all the time too.
that's a great point. That's a
Yeah.
great point. That's a great point.
Well, we're winding down here, Jason, so I just want you to know I'm very grateful for being able to connect and meet you, hear more about your story. Thank you for sharing with the listeners as well. And tell us a little bit more about your What the Hell Do I Know podcast.
That's right. My logo is right behind me.
Yeah,
I'm here in
love
studio.
it.
So yes, what the hell do I know with JB? I started it for my children. I at the dinner table during their tween and teen years. I'm an entrepreneur, former pastor. I always say recovering pastor, but I would always preach at them about things that they should do and think differently and whatnot. And in those moments, they kind of roll their eyes or whatever. And so I'd say, look, do it, don't do it. I mean, what the hell do I know? And so that was kind of where it was birthed out of. And so in my long career of being around other entrepreneurs, I have different folks that I thought, let me do a podcast. And I had some kids I mentored that were like, hey, what's next for you? And I said, well, maybe I'll do one. I actually thought about a podcast for 2.5 years before I actually did it. And so when I finally did it, I thought, nobody wants to listen to me. I'm an old jabroni from the 1900s, a $10 podcast. Nobody cares. And when I started doing it, I thought, nobody listen. And fairly quickly, the influence started happening, and more than 3 people listened. And I thought it'd just be for my 3. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like 25,000 subscribers, a little over 25,000 subscribers. And I'm getting different guests on that are interesting. The last group I had come on, they were just on Sean Ryan, the episode
Cool.
before. And so now they were on my whole little podcast next.
Hey, there you
So,
go.
but then I still love to have I had this story of a friend of mine who they just adopted 2 kids from Miami, black kids from Miami, and they're this white couple here in a predominantly white neighborhood. And what's the struggle and the racial imbalance and the adoption process and the struggle of do those kids, all of these different things that happen. And so I love that conversation just the same. So to me, it's not how many followers you have. It's definitely the story and the testimony is impactful. If you have both, great.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. but I mean, but I much rather I definitely care about the testimony and the story much more than the social influence. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and if people are following along, they can catch me on Instagram's the best place. It's @_Jason_Becker. There's another Jason Becker out there. He has all the jasonbecker.coms. He was a great guitarist that ended up with ALS. He's like the longest living person with ALS. And so, I can't, there'll be a lot of good, I'm sure, from his side too, if you check his stuff out.
Yeah,
But
either way.
I'm the other Jason Becker.
I'm really glad that you decided to go with podcasting because
Thank you.
this whole time I've been thinking like your voice is just perfect for being a podcast host. It's
Oh
like it's
my
just so
gosh.
smooth and relaxing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Yeah, I
yeah,
appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome. Well, thank you again, Jason. Super excited that we got to connect, and please let me know if there's anything that I can do for you.
For sure. Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. If there's someone who came into your mind who you feel like can benefit from listening to this podcast, I would encourage you to share. Remember that you are worthy and capable of amazing things. You deserve nothing less than the best, and hope to see you on the next episode.